What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel and welcome to the final Week 5 preview and prediction that's coming out today. I'll have some more on tap for you tomorrow, but I want to take you to Manhattan, Kansas. It's the only other top 25 battle, or I should say battle between two top 25 teams that we haven't touched on yet today, and this is a very vital one for both of these Big 12 programs. After disappointing Big 12 openers, the Kansas State Wildcats and Oklahoma State Cowboys are going to be looking to bounce back and revive their campaign to try to push for a Big 12 conference title. I'll tell you everything you need to know about the Wildcats and Cowboys here in just a little bit, but before we do that, you guys know I have to say thank you for all the love and support this channel has seen and that I have seen here just over this summer, continuing into the college football season, and with everything else I do. I really appreciate everything that you guys do for me and you do for this channel. That being said, if you haven't done so already, but you watch my videos, and you've watched a ton of my videos, you thought about subscribing, hey, now's the time to do it, especially if you're as big of a college football nerd as I am. We are really close to 2,500 subscribers. Ring the bell so you know what I upload. You can also like, you can comment, you can share, and I just really appreciate all of you guys taking time out of, I'm sure, your busy day to watch this video. And if you want to help support me outside of YouTube, go give me a follow on Twitter or X, whatever you happen to call it, at TailgateNate29. I post about articles I write, games I call, literally anything else that you would like to listen to watch, to read. Please go support me over there as well on a more personal level. But with all that being said, guys, it's time to dive on in to this absolutely massive matchup within the Big 12, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. How do we do preview predictions around here on the channel? Well, I'm glad you asked. We first are going to take a deep dive into what the keys to the game are when each team possesses the football. So we'll first look at the Cowboy offense versus this Wildcat defense. Then we'll look at the Wildcat offense versus the Cowboy defense. We'll go through some of my final thoughts as well as how I think this game is going to play out. And at the end of the video, I will give you my final score prediction as well as who I think is going to come out with the win here in Manhattan, Kansas. Makes sense? Good. Let's dive on in talking about this one here. And we are going to start with the Oklahoma State offense. So the offense for Oklahoma State so far this season, I mean, has had some good things. It's also had some bad things, right? And you can go ahead and look and point at this Oklahoma State running game and Ollie Gordon and say it's just not as good as a lot of people thought it was going to be this season. Case in point, the first game that Ollie Gordon played this, or I said the first game that Oklahoma State played this season, Ollie Gordon was running like a monster, and he was running exactly like he did last season. Had 28 carries, 126 yards, 3 touchdowns, and even had 20 receiving yards in that game as well. Since that game, he's been held to just about 150 yards rushing, if not maybe a little bit more than that. But Oklahoma State, especially Ollie Gordon, has really struggled. And you go back to last week too, Alan Bowman, for the most part this year has been sensational. 1,173 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 4 picks. This last game that Oklahoma State played this past Saturday against Utah, Alan Bowman got benched for most of that second half, and Garrett Rangel didn't come in and do much better. But he had 2 picks in that game, some costly interceptions that prevented Oklahoma State from making that game a lot closer than what they should have. So this is an Oklahoma State offense that has some question marks coming into this game. But again, those 4 picks by Alan Bowman, the only 4 turnovers that Oklahoma State has there. So if Alan Bowman can clean up those interceptions, well, Oklahoma State is not likely to turn the football over. And this is an offensive line that has been phenomenal this season. They've only allowed 1 sack. And yeah, maybe you'd like them to do a little bit better in not pass protection, in run blocking to help Ollie Gordon sort of get going. A lot of that is also on Ollie Gordon to be able to step up. And besides this Kansas State secondary, this defense has been really good, guys, especially that defensive front 6, front 7, whatever schematic and style they happen to be in. They've allowed under 300 yards per game this year, and except for that blip against Tulane, well, I can't really say blip. You take a look at the Tulane game, you take a look at the BYU game as well. this is a defense that still has some weaknesses, but overall has a pretty darn good pass rush. Again, though, guys, you want to look at the weakness on this defense. It is that secondary. The secondary just has not played like a lot of Kansas State fans thought it was going to play like this season, and that's going to be a huge key here in this game, especially if Bowman can limit the turnovers here in this game and can limit those picks. I mean, Alan Bowman is a good enough quarterback, and Oklahoma State has good enough weapons, such as guys like Stribling and Shetron and Presley, that are going to be able to, and many others that I forgot to mention there as well, that are going to be able to challenge this Wildcat secondary and let the pass game work. But the first key I have for you, and again, it's not necessarily more of, yes, it's a key for every game until it happens, but now at this point, it is a question, right? Ollie Gordon has to start taking the pressure off of Alan Bowman. He has to start running like he did last year and in the first game of the season. The only question is, when is that going to happen? Will it be here? I mean, the way that this Kansas State rush defense and the front six, front seven have played overall this season as a whole, not really likely that this is the game that Ollie Gordon is going to break out, but it also is the game that Ollie Gordon has to break back out and has to reestablish himself as a really, really, really vital threat for this Oklahoma State offense and one of the best running backs in college football. You're going up against, to this point, one of the best rush defenses the country has to offer. You have to be able, have to be able to get something going on the ground here. Take the pressure off of Bowman, because if the run game just isn't working like it has in a lot of cases for Oklahoma State this season, well, Kansas State knows what they're going to do. They're going to bring some blitz packages. They're going to send pressure, and they are going to get home to Alan Bowman. But that's going to be really hard to do here against this Oklahoma State offensive line, guys, that even against the Utah Utes, for as good as Utah is, right, that's the only sack that Oklahoma State has allowed this season, and they only allowed 3 tackles for loss against that Utah defense. Again, numbers that you want to improve on, but before last week, they were one of the few teams in the country that still had not allowed a sack. It's still a really good offensive line here, guys, and it's going to be a test for this Kansas State defensive front and pass rushers to try to get home. Again, 12 sacks on the year is absolutely outstanding. It's a phenomenal number, but they have to be able to get home. They have to be able to break through, and this is possibly the best offensive line, at least in pass protection, that they have played yet. And possession, I think, is going to matter a ton. You take a look at Oklahoma State's offensive possession on average this season, guys, it's not great. It is not great at all. And Utah, I believe, had the ball for, I'll fact check this here. I mean, yeah, so that time of possession number already wasn't in favor of Oklahoma State. They were still, their opponents were out possessing them in games. Before that Utah game, Utah had the ball for 42 and a half minutes. 42 and a half minutes. That simply cannot happen here. And even though Oklahoma State made it a game down the stretch, guys, this is an Oklahoma State team that has to win the time of possession battle, because when you take a look at this Kansas State offense, well, they run the ball really, really, really freaking well. And this is a team where it's not just one player running the football for Kansas State. DJ Giddens is obviously the main guy, averaging 6.1 yards per carry, has 417 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. He's the guy that does it the most, right? Avery Johnson at quarterback. He's shown he can get outside of the pocket and run as well. 621 yards, or 261 yards. Sorry, flipped the first 2 numbers there. 261 yards. There you go, and 6.7 yards per carry. And then Dylan Edwards, when he's come into play, has also been sensational. 21 carries, 179 yards, is averaging 8.5 yards per carry with 2 touchdowns this season. It really is a 3-headed rushing monster for this Kansas State team. A 2-headed monster in that backfield, and then you couple in the threat of Avery Johnson pulling it and running. I mean, that's going to be tough to stop, guys. And look, before we talk about this Oklahoma State defense, I want to touch on Avery Johnson, because much like the Ollie Gordon situation, as okay, he has to step up. The question now is, when will he? The same thing goes for Avery Johnson, guys. We expected so much out of Johnson this year. Only 620 yards, 6 touchdowns, 3 picks. It just has not really been the type of season that a lot of Kansas State fans have pictured Avery Johnson having thus far, and he had a lot of trouble against that BYU Cougar defense. Now, again, the question remains for him, when does he take that next step? We've seen him run. We are not questioning that part in his game. when does he take the next step as a passer? This is a Kansas State offense that is going to be focused on running the football first, but they have to take that next step as a passer. That is, or I should say, he has to take that next step as a passer. That is absolutely vital. Again, that's not more of a key anymore. It's more of a question, right? When does it happen? Because it has to happen. When does it happen, right? But this is an Oklahoma State defense, guys, that overall has just really struggled this year. And I'll tell you how after this water break, because water is important. So make sure you stay hydrated. This is just a defense that has struggled as a whole, right? They have allowed teams to run all over them, literally and figuratively. The secondary has not been great. The rush defense has not been great. They're allowing 6 yards per play. They got some really good players over there. It just has not come together as a team. Schematically, it hasn't come together. But I will tell you a couple things this Oklahoma State defense does pretty well, and you can point them out on screen here as well. They have 9 sacks. They have forced 8 turnovers so far this season. That is what has helped them. It's what kind of helped them stay in that Utah ball game a little bit there and make it interesting down the stretch. Also, this offense waking up, and let's be honest, Utah kind of getting off or taking their foot off the gas pedal there. But this is a Cowboy defense, guys, that overall has just mightily struggled. But it's a Cowboy defensive front, guys, that is really tough to stop in pass rush, and it's going to have to be contained here. Not only is it good in pass rush, it can have a pretty good presence in that backfield. Now, it hasn't been there consistent enough to really slow down this run game, and they've allowed way too many explosive plays there on the ground. But Oklahoma State, this is the defensive front that I think when you look at any part of this defense and you're trying to find a part to this Cowboy defense to think, okay, what can give Kansas State the most trouble? I think it is that defensive front. I think it is that pass rush, and I think it is this Kansas State offensive front that could end up getting bullied throughout this game. Now, have they so far this season? For the most part, no. There have been some moments, especially in that BYU game, especially in that Tulane game, to where they were not the more physical team. And they've also turned the football over a lot. Oklahoma State's going to want to get the defensive line back there early and often, force those turnovers. But, guys, I mean, that's something that I think Oklahoma State is going to need badly here in this game. They have not won the time of possession battle at all this year. They haven't shown they can do it. Ollie Gordon is not shown to be the player that he was last season. You saw Alan Bowman struggle last week. And this defense overall as a whole just has not been that great this season. You're going up against a Kansas State team that also needs a win just as badly as you do. They get their home field and home fans behind them. The Cowboys need sacks. They need turnovers. But the biggest thing, guys, that I can emphasize here in this game is the time of possession battle will matter. Usually it does in some ways, and especially mattered in that Utah game that Oklahoma State played just last week. Guys, this is a noon game on ESPN, and again, I said this last week and picked Oklahoma State to beat Utah because you never want to count out Mike Gundy, because as soon as you do, as soon as you do, you're making a mistake, because Mike Gundy's going to come for you, and he's going to prove a lot of people wrong. Mike Gundy proved me wrong. I do not think Oklahoma State is going to win this game. I think Avery Johnson, again, who knows when he takes that step up at his rush ability and the weapons that Kansas State has and the way that Oklahoma State has played defense this year. I just don't think it's going to be a good game for Oklahoma State here. I do not think the script is going to be in the Cowboys' favor. And again, until Ollie Gordon proves that he can show up on a consistent basis again, not this offensive line's fault, guys. They've only allowed 1 sack this season. Alan Bowman, for the most part, has been fantastic. You want him to play just much better here. Both teams have some concerns with individual players offensively. So ultimately, to me, it comes down to which defense I trust and which team is going to win the time of possession battle. And to me, for both of those, that's Kansas State. So I think Kansas State improves to 1-1 in conference play, while Oklahoma State falls to the dreaded 0-2. Let me know what you guys think about this game in the comment section down below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and I'll see all you guys tomorrow with more prediction videos. Goodbye.